Okay, so what am I building? Well, that's going to be for another video. What I wanted to talk about today, and yes, I'm all I'm all scruffy today, is in case you haven't noticed, we have an election in Canada. And I don't think it's going quite the way the people in power thought it was going to go. So that's right, just 2 weeks ago, our Prime Minister of Canada, in the middle of telling us that we are about to go into a fourth wave of the coronavirus, said to Canada, "I think this is a good time to come out and vote." That's right, it's a pandemic. Be careful where you're going. You got to get vaccinated. Don't congregate in large areas and don't get all in the same place, but come on out and vote. And the reason they called a vote was 100% so they can get a majority, because all the polls said that if they were to call an election today, they were going to win a majority government in a landslide. They were at close to 40% in the polls of being reelected. And the next main party, the Conservatives, was way down around the 28%, 27%, and the NDP slightly behind them as our three main parties. We have a few more, the Green Party, the People Party, etc., but the main parties are those three in Canada. And so it looked like a lock. It looked like it was going to be a lock. Even though the Prime Minister has had some issues in the past, he's been able to smile his way through it. And a lot of people weren't paying so much attention to all the things he was doing, as opposed to the things that was going on in their own lives, like the pandemic, being in lockdown, trying to get your shots, whether or not you can go to school with your kids. All this kind of stuff is what most people were concentrating on. And so the Liberals here in Canada called an election with that big of lead in the polls. And in 2 weeks, their lead has completely disappeared. In fact, according to most polls right now, 5 out of 6 polls here in Canada are saying they're actually now behind the Conservative Party. Both of them hovering around just over 30 to around the 32% range, with the NDP in the 20s and everybody else below that. What a change. Now, what has caused this dramatic drop? Well, people started to pay attention. First of all, they said, why are you calling an election when you don't have to? He was only barely a year into the term of being reelected. And people said, well, you're just calling this so you have overwhelming power. You just want the authority to do anything you want. And people started waking up to that. People started paying attention to Bill C-10, where he's going to start calling YouTube channels and Facebook postings and everything. You might be under government restrictions now of what you're allowed to process and what you're allowed to put out there. And they will deem whether or not it's correct content. In other words, you can't have your opinion. You can only have the opinion of what the government says you can have the opinion of. Sound like some countries that you might have heard of, like China and countries like that, and North Korea? Does that kind of sound a little bit like that? Well, it certainly kind of sounds that way here. People also remember that the very first country the Prime Minister tried to make a deal with a vaccine for was China. That's right. The very first vaccine deal the Canadian government signed was with China. And China, within a few weeks of signing that deal, said, yeah, we're not going to send you anything, after Canada started sending all their information to China on what they had accumulated in the research of the virus and everything they knew. They had sent it, and then China said, no, we don't want to do it. And then the government didn't even tell Canadians about it until a journalist uncovered the fact that China already said, no, that deal's no good. Then we also have our Prime Minister who is up in front of the ethics boards for violating ethics violations. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. And found guilty twice. On the third one, they managed to find a scapegoat in Justin Morneau, one of our finance ministers. I believe it's finance minister? Yeah. And either way, found a scapegoat for that, as they were found guilty of giving almost $1 billion contract to close personal friends of the Prime Minister, supposedly to stimulate students and help them through the pandemic, etc., etc. But he has been found guilty 2 other times of breaking ethics violation. He is the Prime Minister who has been in front of the ethics board the most in Canadian history. And he's only been in power 5 years. So, let's give him another 4 years and see how many more ethics violations he can grab, I guess, is kind of the story. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a big political guy. I don't, if I hear something that I like, I say, hey, I like that idea. If I hear something I don't like, I say, hey, I don't like that idea. Doesn't matter to me what party you're on. But I don't think they thought this was going to go anywhere where they were going now. And then, not only do we start to have a surge in the pandemic starting up in some of the provinces here in Canada that we're about to go into an election in, we also have the catastrophe in Afghanistan where Canada has left behind people we promised to protect. In fact, Canada was the first country to leave. Other countries were still there. United States was still there. The UK was still there. France was still there. We pulled out. And you have to wonder if we pulled out mostly because we're in the middle of an election. And how bad would it look if one of our soldiers was injured over there? You should hang your head in shame. You should not go on camera and smile and say, hey, I'm going to invest $1 billion in vaccine passports for people of Canada. Meanwhile, we've abandoned people that had trust in us in Afghanistan and just said, we're in an election, sorry, but I need more power here in Canada. It's not a good look. He should be ashamed.